Guess what?
Was that chopped and screwed on your
Guess
end
what?
like it was mine?
I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to pin everything. There we go. It wouldn't open up on Twitter. It wasn't coming up right away. Man, look at that. 11 folks in the room already. Wow. Eagerly anticipating on what we got to say, right? So, welcome back, guys, to a second off-season show. Kind of an irregularity, right? With our track record of the last 6 years.
Because I'm coming in choppy.
Oh, you're frozen, dude. You may have to hop out and then hop back in.
You sure?
You hear me?
I got full bars.
Yeah, I do too. But yeah, I'm showing you got full. But
wow,
move around, move your head, blink 5 times. Yeah, you're just a little lagged. I don't know why, but I think we're okay. I think it'll catch up eventually. You're blurry. Yeah, you're blurry. All right, so we are back. Just like I was saying, a very irregular show for us, as you know. Usually, when we have this show going, the last few years, we've put it to bed. You know, during the off season for a while, dude. You are there. You go. That's better. We usually put it to bed, and we come back in the summer. But man, so much has gone on the last couple of days, right? The last couple of days, the last 2 weeks, really realignment coming up, and us having Ray Zapata on to talk realignment with us for a bit, kind of explain the ins and outs of it. And then now, you know, the bombshell. I don't know if you really want to call it a bombshell because, you know, folks have been saying this was coming, right? If you're on the inside of the program, if you've been around the area for a bit, folks were telling you it was kind of about that time. That Coach Campbell was gonna hang it up. And you know, sure enough, right? And it was the year, you know, and that's, man, 40 plus years, right? Justin, 40 plus years of continuity, right?
Yeah.
And that says a lot
back into the show,
because you're not going to see that anywhere, I don't think, nowadays, right?
No. Nah, man, 40 years, and especially to stick at one spot, right? Obviously, probably had a lot of suitors over the years come calling, right, for a head coaching job, and I think, you know, it's kind of special when you find a guy like that that stuck through it, right? And you go back to that letter, which we've talked about this letter probably the last 24 hours a couple times, and
yeah, let me
first of all,
I can't share it because it's not too small. Yeah,
hey, don't share anything, dude. We're running on small bandwidth right now. But seriously, you think about it, dude. He stayed as an assistant, right? He didn't take no credit for, you know, you don't get nothing on your record as an assistant coach, and I think I want to go test that. Hey, can I be a head coach? Right? Can I run the show myself? And the dude, and the success that they had together is crazy.
Now,
and then, you know, 5 in his 2 years as a coach, athletic director, right?
Justin.
So it speaks volumes for him.
Hey, you're showing yellow.
Yes.
Your connection is dropping out. Yeah. Move closer to the window, or put an antenna on or something. Or see, I'm showing you're yellow on my end. I'm showing an 8 out of 10.
What about now?
I've got 10 out of 10. No. Still the same.
Wow.
Go throw the kids and your wife outside in the pool, have them hang out, and then go hang out in the living room.
Dude. Did I come back?
All right, so while Justin's trying to figure out his no, you're still yellow and you're very choppy. So the letter that Justin's referencing, right? So Coach Danaher, and I want to apologize to Len Hayward. I had no idea when we shared this thing on Twitter that it was actually in the paper. I saw this letter. It was a 4-page letter, and it was on the Calallen Booster Club page, and it was on Stephen Floyd's page, who's a longtime Calallen booster / historian. And man, go back and read it, guys. Go back and read it. And man, it hits a lot of things on the head with coaching in general. Not just what he's done and what Cal Allen's done, but just like I was saying before the break, you don't see very many people stay at a school district for 40 years and not be the head coach for the majority of that, or the athletic director, right? And that says a lot about loyalty and the comfortability they had working with Coach Danaher. Um, Coached in 132 football playoff games, 39 straight years in the state playoffs, 12 trips to the semifinals, and two championship appearances. Yes, yes, you're full now. I'm just going over the letter, Justin, just reading some parts that were in there, just talked about how the 132 football games, right, in 40 years that he coached in, right? Um, talking about track, he's not talking, nobody's ever talked about his track record. He was the head boys coach, 600 regional qualifiers, over 45 state qualifiers, 16 district championships, 2 area team championships, 2 regional team championships, and 3 individual state championships in track. Right. And I didn't know this. So Lucas Mireles still holds a state record in the shot put with a throw of 66 feet, 11 and a half inches. So Cal Allen's got great kids, right? They've always had great kids. And they've had great coaching. But I messaged the athletic secretary, the one that was we kind of started a fight with at the beginning of the year, remember? We've since become friends. And it's uncharted waters over there, right? I mean,
Yep.
what next? What do you do next? How do you handle that? I mean, nobody hit 30, 40 years, dude. That's
Yep.
that's almost as long as I've been alive. I'm 47, and as
Yeah.
far as I can remember, that's all I've known there, and
He's coached football longer than I've been alive, which is crazy, right?
yeah, I've said it a lot. My wife's a Cal Allen grad,
Which is why I wore the maroon tonight.
and her cousin, who I call her brother because they're born the same day, same year, went to school together. He played on those teams that played in the Astrodome that Coach Campbell's referencing against Lamarck and whatnot. He's been on those teams, and with Campbell retiring, he messaged my wife and tells her, our era's over, because it's gone and it's weird, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's I don't know. I think the system needs to have a little more juice revitalized into it, right, so to speak.
Definitely.
We talked about that a little bit on and off. We touched on it in the show last year, I think, a little bit, and it's no secret. Like he was 20-5 in his 2 years as the AD, half head coach, but he referenced in that letter he's tired, right? And I think you could sense a little bit of that in the season as well. When we talked to him, right, in the TM game, you could tell you could tell that the season had seemed to be kind of putting a grind on him, right?
Yeah.
And that's nothing to be shameful about, right? He's coached longer than I've been alive by 10 years, 11 years, right? So he's been in it for a minute. And the letter, man, I keep going back to the letter, but it's so good because, like, if you realistically want to think about or like want to know what these dudes go through, right? You read that letter, right? Read the letter because it'll kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek into the day in the life, right, of a high school football coach in Texas. And those dudes get put through the ringer, man. 16, 17-hour days.
Yep.
For 40 plus years. It never takes a break.
And then what it kind of opened my eyes a little bit because you don't think about it at the time, right? That's where history's your friend. And talking about the teams the players that he had to prepare for as a defensive coordinator, right? Ty Detmer, Heisman Trophy winner, LaDainian Tomlinson, Jermaine Mayberry, Greg Randall, Bailey Zappi, Garrett Gilbert, Chris Brazel, Derek Foster, Lima Swede, Martin Dossett, Devin. How's he saying his last name now?
A-Chain.
I don't think he's calling it A-Chain anymore. I think he changed the pronunciation.
No, it's A-Chain. Devin A-Chain.
I thought he changed it. I thought he made a big stink about it. Jace McClellan, right, who's probably going to be a 2024 fourth-round draft pick. Yep. Right? Little old Cal Allen.
Devin A-Chain would have been probably Rookie of the Year had C.J. Stroud not put up legitimately MVP numbers as a rookie, and Devon got hurt, right? But if you go back, Cal Allen actually kept I think that was the one game in his entire career with Marshall that I want to say he didn't go over 100 yards. I want to say they kept him underneath 100 yards, maybe two. But it was like it was one of the, whatever it was. It was one of those like dang, like they kind of. I want to say it was 100 yards. They clamped down on him pretty good, and that's impressive because that dude's got Olympic style track speed, right? And Calallen
Yeah.
has nothing like that.
And see, people forget he wasn't the only one on that team. Malik Hornsby was.
Yep.
He was a dude, man. So
Yeah,
and I think people forget about that. So and man, they almost won that game.
yes. I mean, I watched them play one of the best games I've seen in person in high school football when they beat College Station in 2016 to go to the state title.
He referenced
That game was crazy. I couldn't give you no kids off that team from College Station, but if you look at those two teams matched up against each other, there was no doubt that team out athleted Calallen by leaps and bounds.
And that's been a lot. I mean, that's not anomaly, right? That was the constant. Once they got higher up in Region 4 and into those Region 3 teams, right? That's they've always been. And he references it, right? He referenced it in his letter that it's hard for the Region 4 teams to keep up with the speed from Region 2 and Region 3. Right? Yeah. It's just what it is.
And when you look at that Alito game that year, they honestly, in my opinion, had they not had like two costly turnovers, they very well could have won that game. They had Alito reeling in that first half. That offense was clamped down. They hadn't seen a defense, I think, playing that tough in a long time. And those kids had Calallen probably outweighed by a good 20, 30 pounds across the board and were faster by far.
Easy.
You know what I mean? And Jason McClellan, I think, was a freshman that year, but he ended up being number 1 running back, number 2 running back coming out as a senior. So, like, the talent was there even when he was younger. So, it's crazy.
I think we've kind of waxed poetic enough a little bit. We've got the guest that everybody's in the room waiting for. Right. So this is a big guest for us, right? We've been doing this for about 6 years. And when we started this thing, we started it as a joke for some of you guys that came in here. Not really a joke, but we didn't take it serious, right? As we kept going and saw what we were doing and the results we were getting, we got a little more serious with it. We buckled down. Look, we got 2 off-season shows in. We've never done that. Yeah. Right. So it's a big deal.
Clean the act up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, a lot. We were picking fights with people and whatnot.
Except we're still 6 minutes late, per usual. That's the theme, dude.
That is the standard. That is the standard we have set now, is to be at least 6 minutes late. And we start at whatever-ish, 7:30-ish, 8-ish, 8:30-ish, whatever, right? But that's enough about us, right? So we're going to bring in the managing editor of Dave Campbell, Texas Football, the Bible, Greg Tepper.
Hey, lads.
Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on. A big fan of your work and excited to talk a little South Texas football. This is fun. And by the way, as somebody who does a daily show mostly about high school football, doing 2 shows is a lot and should be like it's tough sledding sometimes. Like, I get it. Yeah. So I feel your pain.
Yeah. And see, like I said, this and everybody else knows this, but some of these new heads that are in here, we do this for fun, right? We make no money off this thing. So that makes it even that much harder for us to do this, right? Because it's like, well, we can let it slide. We need a break. But no, it's just so much has happened, right? This continual year. We had the realignment, which kind of shook everybody up. And now this one, right? The retirement. And that's the reason why we have you on, right? So we kind of wax poetic about Coach Campbell here for a little bit in the Calallen program as a whole. From a state perspective, the bird's eye view, will you say, when this news broke, what do you feel this did to the state?
Yeah, this is a shockwave, like, plain and simple. I mean, when you talk about one of the premier jobs in Texas high school football coming open for the first time, literally in my lifetime. I know that when Coach Danaher retired, the job might have been open for like 30 minutes, but like there was an understanding that like need not apply. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we're gonna be set. with Steve Campbell stepping down, it was a really, I mean, it's a huge deal. And it's something that, I think has really resonated across the state, not only in media circles, but also in coaching circles. I've had a number of coaches reach out to me and say, hey, like, you got any connections down there at Calallen, stuff like that. This is a big job. And for this to come open, I think is, for people who are into high school football history, like I am, and other people, at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, this is the end of an era. This is the closing of a chapter, and one of the most remarkable chapters in Texas high school football, plain and simple. I mean, you're talking about, 442 wins over 40 years is crazy. 39 consecutive playoff appearances. I mean, that's insane. And you might be thinking, well, what, anybody can do that. Anybody can make the playoffs. Alito hasn't done that. Like, Alito's only got 28. They missed the playoffs in like 1996 or something like that, 97. They missed playoffs. Like, it's not a guarantee, but Calallen was one of those few guarantees. And now, one of the steadiest kind of programs, like the program that you set your watch to, is suddenly in flux and is going to be going through some major changes. And so it's certainly resonating with us at Dave Campbell's, and I know it's been resonating across the state in pretty much every circle.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. You kind of answered it. So, is it a big job, right? Is this a good job?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how you look at it. Like, on one hand, of course it's a good job. Like, the resources are there. You don't have to build an expectation there. The expectation is you're going to win your district. You're going to play deep in the playoffs. You're going to be in the mix every single year. You don't have to build those expectations. It's built for you. The one of the greatest foundations of all time has been laid. So there's that. But there's
that, right?
There's the Nick Saban Alabama thing, right? Do you want to be Kalen DeBoer? Do you want to be the guy after the guy, right? Because there's because with that foundation comes expectations, both internally and externally. And the minute that whoever gets this job loses a district game, or they start off 6-2. Suddenly there's going to be people saying, oh, well, Calallen's down. Of course they're not, but that's the expectation. Same thing. Like I said, I keep coming back to Alabama. When Alabama loses 2 games next year, I don't know if they're going to, but if they lose 2 games next year, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, there you go. The magic's gone, because that's the expectation. And yet 98% of other Texas high school football programs, if they lost the second game, would be like, okay, let's try not to lose a third. It is a singular job, I think, in Texas high school football, because of the history, because of the expectation, and because of the way that the program was built too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Greg. I almost think you'd want to be the guy after the guy, right, in this situation, because if you do come in, right, and you have the hiccups, right, how quick are they going to be to give you how big is your leash going to be, right? That's my question. So that's where I question, like, will you get a big name, or are you going to get what I would call the mid name, right? The 3A guy, 4A guy that's had a lot of success, who's rising, or are you going to pull in a bigger guy from maybe a 6A who wants to kind of come down and taste a little bit of the Calallen experience, or a 5A guy who's had some success and maybe he wants to come down here and take over that program, right? So I'm kind of in flux with it as well. I don't know what to expect, honestly, when you start looking at I would love to see the list. I would love to see this list that comes out.
It's really interesting too, because you look across kind of recent history of Texas high school football hires. There's going to be this idea of, let's go get a big name. Let's go get a splashy name. And sometimes that works, right? I mean, if there's a certain number of coaches that if they knock on your door and say, I want the Calallen job, you should probably just listen to them and give them the job. I think they'd be a good fit. But I go back to, I'll give you a really good example. And probably the best avatar I would have to a kind of hire that you would look at. When Tom Westerberg left Allen in 2015. This was right after the Kyler Murray kind of run, that the Kyler Murray dynasty. He left after 2015, took a job at Barbers Hill. That job came open, and everyone was clamoring about the job. Oh my gosh, they won 3 consecutive 6 ACC championships. They had Kyler Murray. They're loaded with talent. And they went, and so who's it going to be? It's going to be this big splashy hire, a name you've heard. And they went and they hired a guy named Terry Gamble. Terry Gamble was one of the names that I think, from a relative Texas high school football casual, might say, oh, like, okay. But I know at Dave Campbell's, when that happened, our staff was going, this is a really good hire, because he had done really great things at Hewitt Midway in the Central Texas area. And it was the kind of idea of he's ready for that next step, that big job. I think there's a couple of ways to go. And sometimes the name that may not be that big splashy hire is sometimes the best name, because it's going to be somebody who understands it, somebody who understands they have to go in there and earn it and earn their name in kind of the Calallen record books. One of the things I'm very interested in, a thing that I'm absolutely fascinated by, would be, what kind of program does this look like? Because one of the things that has been, like, in your mind, not just you guys, but the people listening, I want you to picture Calallen football. You know what you're looking at. You're looking at like outstanding defense, especially in the front seven, right? You're looking at like a grinding running game that's going to hit you with play action, and they're going to be like super sound in special teams. Like that's Calallen football, as the day is long. That is, in 2024, a different way of doing business. Does somebody come in and try to modernize Calallen? What happens if that has its natural growing pains? You want to talk about having any immediate ammunition from people of saying like, oh, well, we went to the wide open spread and look what it got us. It got us 8-2, So that's something I'm really fascinated by, because one of the things I think Coach Danaher and Coach Campbell did, they got so much more from less. And that has always, to me, been the story of Calallen. I'm interested to see what direction they go as far as scheme is concerned.
See, you can touch on a couple things there, right? Because 100% they got way more out of less, right? Because the expectation and the power that was built, right? You didn't want to be that group of kids that didn't get that playoff berth, or you lost to TM, right? You did not want to be that group. They thought they had a down year in, I think, 2014 maybe?
2014.
That was like that. The world was on fire back then, right? They got bowed out in like the second round, maybe. They kind of had a hard time in district, even though they won district. Everyone in town was saying, "Oh, this is the worst we've ever been since Danaher took over." But going back to what you said on what does it look like now, does that narrow you down to, are you going to be looking in the coaching hire for a guy that brings that exact same mentality? Are we going to grind it out? Is it going to be a wing T, slot T style coaching system? Or, like you said, do they go for the guy that modernizes them, right, and brings them into that shotgun, spread it out? Because another thing is, too, you got to look at what is in the pipeline. It takes a lot to develop a good quarterback. It's going to take a couple of years. You really need to start working on good quarterback systems in junior high. And as soon as they get into high school ball, good friend Todd Dodge, if you ever had a chance to watch our episode, he explains how he does his systems. Starts in junior high, they feed into high school. They have the quarterback camps, and he's put out successful stuff. Now, I'm not saying everyone can do that, because Westlake's a different system, but you have to start kind of molding quarterbacks kind of early to fit your role. So there might be some growing pains there with trying to go, hey, we don't got a quarterback that can throw the ball, and we're used to running the ball.
So it's interesting you bring that up, and it's interesting you bring up Todd Dodge, because because this is a point kind of about one of his previous employers. Go back to 2014. And the opening game of the college football season, and I'll always remember this. It was a Thursday night, and it was A&M was at South Carolina, and it was the year after Johnny Manziel had left, and Kenny Hill took over as quarterback. And everyone's like, "Oh man, big shoes to fill. He's going to step in. How's he going to look?" And he goes out there on national television and just carves up South Carolina, and And Twitter's going nuts. People are going crazy. Like, oh my gosh, like who is this guy? Like Kenny Trill is born that night, all that fun stuff.
Kenny Trill was born.
Yeah. I'm sitting there watching this and I'm going, he's just running the South Lake Middle School offense. Like he's been making these reads since he was literally 10. Like, like there's nothing special. Like, it's obviously special, but like there's no like learning curve for him. This is all the same offense. And that to me is super interesting about your point is let's just say you want to snap your fingers and switch over to an air raid or a passing game. Where's the quarterback coming from? Because
better hire a coach with a quarterback kid.
Absolutely, because then you're going to need somebody that is going to need to learn that system quickly. And by the way, you're going to have to start at the lower levels too to build up those quarterbacks. Like the reason that Allen always has a quarterback is because they've got middle schools that are running the same offense. Like the reason that Gunner is so good is because they're running that pistol option offense from the ground up. And so that's something that I think is really interesting and why it wouldn't be a surprise if they did come in, if whoever they hired did come in and change things around, if there would be some growing pains in that regard. And not because this person's not a good coach, but simply because that's kind of the natural iteration and the natural growth of a program.
And the other part of that here, the kids down here in Calallen, they run Pee-wee football from the time they can put pads on that actually fit. It's the run game. It's the wing tee. Every now and then you get a guy that probably tries to get a shotgun play and get fancy. But from the things I've always heard about them is it was kind of laid out from Danaher and them below them that this is how we're going to do things. And they learned this offense at a very young age. Not the full extent, but they learn it from a very young age. So these kids know it.
And to that point, like, that is because you got to remember these guys are like these kids are watching college football and they're watching the NFL and these guys are throwing it around and you're like, wait a second, we're going to run the wing tee? You've got to convince them. And that's why you have to continue winning to get people to buy in, especially on a kind of offense that is not predicated on making stars. It's not. And you made the point earlier about that title game against Aledo. And you're exactly right. They had him like kind of not on the ropes. Aledo was probably the favorite, but like if it weren't for a couple of fumbles, like Calallen dragged them into the deep waters. Calallen dragged them into their kind of game. And that was kind of the magic of the Phil Danaher, Steve Campbell thing is that they would make you play their game. And if you beat them at their game, hey, tip your cap to you, you did it. But like that to me is a mark of Calallen football is getting you to play their style of game and not letting you get into your game, to borrow a hockey phrase.
100%. And if you've ever and you watch them and they have been the games they've been blown out in are usually games that teams were able to establish, hey, we're not playing your type of game. Mm-hmm. They get up by 3 scores, and then after that, Calallen couldn't do much with them. But the games that they lost in deep rounds, right, that I've witnessed and you've witnessed, it was within a point, field goal. I mean, the Manville game. They had Manville beat that year, lost on a 40-yard field goal. I mean, just shocking, right? And that Manville team, same. They were way more loaded with talent than Calallen ever thought about being. And like you said, Calallen drug them into the deep water, made them play their style of game, and almost knocked them off. I mean, you could probably count on multiple hands time after time when Calallen got knocked out in the playoffs. It was games very similar to that.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, you look up and down their history, and that's the way to beat them. Is that you kind of got to beat them at their game. You're not gonna trick them into their game and into your game, and that's what I think is so remarkable, and what I think will make this a really interesting hire to see which way that they decide to go.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take 4 steps back. I was going to let y'all chat. I was trying to jump in, but I was going to let y'all finish y'all's thoughts. So going back to the quarterback, bringing a quarterback in, not having a quarterback. The other part of that, switching to the air raid or wide open spread offense, Justin, you can attest to this, is the offensive line play.
Absolutely.
A lot of folks forget about that. I mean, it's a whole different blocking scheme to get ready. Do you have the bodies that can hold up that kind of blocking, that wide open split set on the offensive line? Yeah. Are they going to be fast enough? Are they going to do that, make the adjustments as they need to? A lot of folks forget about that.
I can tell you this from an offensive line standpoint. If I'm an offensive lineman in Calallen right now, I'm praying for the dude that wants to spread the ball out.
Yeah.
because quite frankly, to me it was a much easier blocking scheme. Yes, you have the opportunity to get put on skates, and you're going to be the laughing stock at film, right? Which is never a good thing. But at the same time, like when you're in that wing T, dude, it's a grind if it's an offensive lineman. Because you're talking 10, 11, 12 play drive sometimes, unless you're lucky and bust one off, right? Then you're having a good time at halftime because you're not playing anymore. But yeah, man, it's a way different grind. But the thing that I think that needs to be brought up is not only are you talking about a head coach, right? And I don't like saying this because these are people's lives, right? Livelihoods at stake here. But you bring in a dude that's got a different style system. What does that look like as a staff all the way down to the junior high? And does he have full control? Because these guys have been with Danaher and Steve for a while. And I'm not saying they can't adjust and coach a different style of football, but it's not going to be the norm for them. And you might not see eye to eye with the new coach's philosophy on, hey, we're going to pass block this way. Or, hey, we're going to take this kid and we're going to convert him from a running back to a receiver because he's got good hands. And it's going to be a different system. So what does that look like, right? I mean, you could be talking about a full-blown rebuild here, or you could be talking about just a quick little patch job, so to speak, of we got this guy and he's going to fit our system.
That's a super interesting point because it is a lot bigger than just the head coach. The head coach is obviously going to get a lot of the headlines, but it's going to be how you fill out your staff and what kind of staff you keep. Because one of the things that I think is going to be imperative, especially for a job like this, is I think they need somebody who understands South Texas football, who understands Coastal Bend football, who understands Region 4. Like, I think that's imperative. I think that especially for early success, you can't be surprised by the style of football that they're going to play in South Texas. And so I wonder if they're going to focus on that because South Texas has its own style of football. It's the way you play it. It is more physical. It is more ground and pound. It is more, sometimes lower scoring, and that kind of stuff. And so I do think that would suit Calallen well is to find somebody with Region 4 experience, simply because that is a different ball game. You might say, oh, let's go get Todd Dodge. Todd Dodge just got a job up in the DFW area. Let's go get Todd Dodge. Well, I mean, he knows about, that part of the world, but at the same time, he ain't been there in a while, and winning winning on the Coastal Bend is different than winning in DFW, is different than winning in Houston, is different than winning in the Panhandle. Like, I think that's one of the things I love about high school football in the state, is that different parts of the state have different personalities and different like football personalities. And that's what in South Texas football is its own thing. And you have to, I think, be familiar with it. You can't come in cold on it.
So that brings up a couple things too you can talk about, right? So immediately I told Jacob, I said, do you start looking at a big name from the Valley, right? An RGV guy that wants to possibly come on up and test his waters here because it's Region 4. The Calallen, luster right behind it gets you maybe a little more recognition than a RGV name, right? Then you bring in a guy from up north is kind of different, right? They haven't lived it. A prime example, Rick Rhodes coming down to Portland didn't have the same success that he did Cameron Yo. He had the same style. We were talking about going from, I think when they had Anastasio, it was more of a kind of a power run game out of the shotgun, not a lot of throwing. We had, I think, a running quarterback at the time. Then Rick comes in, he wants to air it out like he did at Cameron Yo, right? Didn't have the same success, but didn't have the quarterbacks.
Or D.D. Westbrook.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I agree with you now. I think maybe getting a guy from the Region 4, and that could, to me, that stretches up to Cuero, right? A little bit that way, lower edge of Houston, all the way on down to the Rio Grande, right? It's interesting though, but that is a good way to bring it because you bring a guy up from north and like Jacob Bible, he's having to adjust to South Texas football right now down in Rockport. It's different from when he was coaching at Aledo and Midlothian Heritage. It's a different style of ball.
And you just you mentioned that like those transplants, it's just a hard transition. It can be, and you've seen it. Great coaches who've come in and just said like this is a different ball game, and so I'm very interested to see the way that Calallen approaches this search, just knowing that you need somebody who I think understands the culture there and understands, not just the Calallen culture, but the South Texas football culture, because it is very different.
Was this when you got the text from the coaches right across the state?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a sense of shock? Were y'all thinking in the DFW when Campbell took this job, we're talking possibly 5 to 8 more years of Steve running the show, or did y'all kind of have the sense of 1 to 2 and done? Because me and Jacob had kind of heard rumblings that he was done when Phil was done, and then I had also heard he was sticking around to help make a good, solid transition and not just leave them in a bind.
Yeah, I had heard those same things. I'd heard those things that Coach Danaher and Coach Campbell were kind of a package deal, and that when they were when Coach Danaher retired, that Coach Campbell was not going to be far behind him. I haven't been privy to those conversations, but it would not surprise me if there was talk of, okay, keep this train on the tracks for a couple of years, and then we'll move on. If that's what you want, doing a favor, and certainly being a head coach at Calallen is not nothing to Steve Campbell. I mean, he goes 20-5 and is a darn good coach there, and is going to have he's not going to get the stadium named after him, because that's already taken, but he's going to be a guy who's well remembered down there. And so I think this is going to be, I think that it would not surprise me. I'll say this. It would not surprise me if, to ease a transition, especially, it was always going to be huge news when Phil Danaher retired, to ease the transition if Steve Campbell stayed on for a couple of years. I had thought that there may be a few more years, maybe one more realignment cycle in this, but I think that, obviously he wanted to retire, and certainly wish him the best, moving forward, and be on the beach more. Yeah. Maybe stressful.
Or the golf course.
Less.
Or the golf course.
Yeah, or the golf course, yeah.
But I think he's a hunting lease type guy.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Tracks.
But Greg, we appreciate you coming on, man. I know we scheduled you for 15 minutes, and then we've gone probably about 30, but man, we really appreciate it. I don't know the answer to this. How long have you been at the magazine?
Actually, that's an interesting question. I have been at the magazine. It'll be 13 years in like a couple weeks.
Okay, so
I was thinking like 11.
So I was hoping maybe early, because I had a question.
Okay.
So I'm on. It's the off season. I'm doing a deep dive on a particular TV series right now, about Texas high school football, and there's a mention of said magazine in there quite a bit, and there was a quarterback of the year, and there was a cover of J.D. McCoy. Is there a copy of this magazine in the archives somewhere? I know it's for the show. I know it's not real. But no. Is there one? No, there is not one.
So the way that worked, you're talking, of course, about Desperate Housewives.
Yes, exactly.
No.
With Hometown Girl.
Friday Night Lights. They put the quarterback on it. They, from what I understand, and again, I wasn't with the magazine at the time, but I have caught up on the history before that.
Yeah.
The producers reached out to Dave Campbell's to essentially like license the masthead, and said, okay, if you give it to us, we will design it and stuff like that. And I think we had a little bit of oversight to make sure they weren't like doing something with our brand that was going to reflect poorly on our brand. I think there was the understanding that they were going to do right by it. Because from what I understand, they were in pretty consistent communication with us about accuracy and just making sure that things fit. Now there's things that drive me crazy in that show.
Oh, 100%. I'm picking it apart now. Yeah.
Oh man. Like, I don't know if it's the show or the movie, but there's a playoff bracket that makes me want
That's the movie.
That's the movie. It's horrible.
Terrible bracket.
I've never been more mad at a movie.
I paused that last August when me and my boys do the annual watch. I paused it and started looking at it. And I was like,
it's awful. It's like a San Antonio team playing a Dallas team in the first round. I'm like, these are unforced errors. Like,
they picked big names and then just threw them out there.
Oh yeah. But you know who was on that bracket? Alice.
Alice is on the bracket.
Alice is on that bracket. Yeah.
So they from what I understand, Dave Campbell's was kind of like an unofficial, like, consultant in that, but they did license the masthead for us to create that cover. I think we have like a file. It's not printed out, but we have like, I think they sent us like the soft copy of it, so it's somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that was my question. But
yeah.
But man, we appreciate you coming on, Greg, man, especially so late at night. And you've probably got a lot going on, TV appearances, whatnot. Maybe you have to wash your hair or something. I don't know. But man, I tell you what,
just like you guys, I'm only washing my hair twice in the off season.
I don't have any hair, dude. So all the hair on my head is right here on my face now. It's kind of unsettling, but again, thanks, Greg. We appreciate it, man. We hope we can have you on again, maybe before the season kicks off, maybe before magazine time, just to give us a rundown of how the magazine works and the work that goes into it, and highlight some of the guys on your staff out there.
I want some sleeper picks when we get closer to the season. I want some sleeper picks.
Okay, I will dial those up for you guys whenever you guys want them. Give me a holler.
We appreciate it, man. Absolutely. We appreciate it, guys. Greg Tepper, give him a hand. Thanks, Greg. We'll see you around.
All right. Later, guys.
That was very pleasant. Very pleasant.
It was.
A lot of knowledge. Let's let the other guy in now. We've got Len's been waiting here forever. So
I didn't know Len was getting on.
Yeah. So here he is.
Just
waiting patiently.
So for 2 hours, Len. Let me get my coffee.
we hope you're on a better chair today, Len.
Yes, I am.
This is on the show.
Oh, was that Tim's house when he broke the chair?
That was at Tim's house.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, you know what's crazy? That was guerrilla style podcasting, dude, at its finest.
Big time, dude.
I wish we could do a little mini doc on that, like of how it went down. Dude, we were getting there at 5:30 in the morning doing shows.
Coming off
twice a week.
Coming off nights twice a week. Yeah.
What a grind.
That was wild.
I have a story about the Friday Night Lights, the movie, because I heard you talking to Greg about that. I was working in Midland when they shot the scenes in the Petroplex. And the guy who voices all the radio of the Permian games in the movie, he actually did TV for Permian. It was a guy named Barry Sykes. He recently passed away. A good friend of mine. He told me that Peter Berg was like, hey, we want you to come out to California so you can do these voiceovers. And he's like, okay. So him and his sidekick went. They put him up in a hotel in Long Beach. And when they got there, Barry was like, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, can you voice a game? He's like, well, I have no rosters. I don't know what teams we're playing. I mean, I got to have some prep here. So the story he gave me was him and the guy he worked with, I think his name was Clay. They sat in a hotel room in Long Beach and basically took that 88 Permian team and had the roster. And then for some of the other schools that they played, they made up names and they were pulling people from the crew. People were finding out they were doing it, and people on the crew were like, hey, can you put my son's name on there and stuff like that. So He said a lot of that was sort of basically a little bit of made up, trying to figure out, so that because he was so used to having a roster or a board and doing a game that he needed, at least that to back up on. And he told me before I left Midland in 2015, he said he still gets checks in the mail from doing that. Because
residuals, really?
Yeah, because he said for the kind of part he had to get a SAG card. He actually, this wasn't like being an extra. He had to actually get a SAG card to do that. And so he was actually still getting residuals for years after it from that. But it was interesting when they filmed it out there when I was working out there in Midland, because they did a lot of shooting at the stadium, the new stadium in Midland. So sorry, but I heard you guys talking about that.
That was Grande, right? Grande Communications, that stadium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which one?
Grande Communications. That was kind of one of the newer stadiums that was built at the time. That was kind of cutting edge. Now it's kind of, I guess.
Was that where they were doing like the away games?
Kind of down here now.
I think that was some of it, and I think they redid a little bit of. They redid the locker room, they did. But they shot some locker room scenes there. I think they did some shooting at Ratliff Stadium, and they did a lot of Hollywoodizing in that movie.
100%. Yeah.
They shot stuff around the town, and the actual sheriff was in it. Because I went to the premiere and he was laughing when they showed his part. When he drove up, y'all going to win state.
That was the actual sheriff?
Yes,
Oh,
that was
that's why he had the
at
ring.
the time that was the actual sheriff. So
That's why he had the ring.
yeah, yes. So
But so we brought Len on to kind of give us the Coastal Bend perspective now on Coach Campbell retiring, and y'all had a couple of stories on. And Len, before you got on, I said my big apology. So that letter, I'll repeat it again because Justin was in and out. That letter that we had put on Twitter, I had got that from. I found that on the Calallen Booster Club page, and it was just
right.
screenshots. I had no idea that was in the paper. I don't like to steal. We don't like to steal the paper's
That's
thunder
okay. No,
with a lot of stuff, because they're in a business, right? We, like I said, we don't make
Yeah.
any money off this. There's no. So we want
No
to help our
worries.
friends out. But no, I want to apologize to you because I had no intention of doing that.
That's okay.
But I mean, it was a great letter, man. Whose idea was that? Was that his?
That was his. Ray told me. Ray called me and said, "Hey, I just got through talking to him. I think it was it Tuesday morning now, I think.
Yeah.
Ray got through talking to him and he said, hey, do you think Len will run this if I send him a statement? And Ray's like, yeah, sure. And so he sends it to me about an hour, half hour or so later. It was 1,800 words.
It was long. It was good long form writing. It was very good long form writing.
I thought it was going to be like a paragraph, whatever. But it was. So I started. So I was like, okay. So after having to do a couple of things, and so I finally got around to getting it in the system and reading it. He did a heck of a job with it. I really did not have to do a whole lot of. I tried to keep it, in his style and his words, with some style editing and stuff like that. For newspapers and things like that. But it was really good, and I think he did a good job of explaining his life, being a coach, also being a mentor, and what it meant to do that. And I think that was the thing that struck me the most was, that part where he wrote about, I don't think the youth are different. I think it's their phones. And, I think we need to, and he said a lot. He mentioned a lot of things in there, what all he'd gone through. And it's interesting that, and it doesn't happen now, and I don't know whether it'll ever happen again. If it does, it'll be rare, is that you have somebody stay in one place for so long. Yep. I mean, he bridged generations. He bridged like 3 to 4 generations of players, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because when he started at Calallen, I would have been in the sixth grade. And I'm 51 years old, and so, I mean, he bridged multiple generations. Him and Coach Danaher did as well. And
coach former players' kids. I mean, that's crazy.
Yes. And, and that's something that is amazing. And to stay in that spot for as long as he did, and not want to be, and I'm sure he probably was looking at being a head coach at some point, but why leave a job you're comfortable in, so I think he felt, but I was, after some of the things that, Ray had covered them a couple times. And after some of the conversations that Ray said he'd had with him, I was not necessarily surprised by the news on Tuesday morning. I kind of thought that there's, I think with his age and just everything that was going on around, I was not necessarily surprised that he said, you know what, I'm going to retire. Now, that doesn't mean, and Quentin Martinez and I have talked about this, that for all we know, he could pop up as somebody's linebacker coach on a rehire in next August, just doing that. So, because he did leave it open to Ray that he might come back, and want to coach. But I think there were just a lot of factors, and let's remember, he has gone through a lot in the last 3 to 4 years with everything that was going on with Coach Danaher.
I think he was tired.
They
really do.
They leaned on him for a lot of things over the last 3 to 4 years, and at some point, it's like he said, I'm tired. And I think it's like, I'm worn out. He's vested. He's been there long enough. It's time to go to the ranch.
I think you're right. I honestly do think you'll see him pop up. Maybe not this year, maybe next year or the year after. I think within a year after next season, I bet we find him. He'll pop up somewhere.
He could, yeah.
As positions coach, maybe a DC somewhere.
If he doesn't officially retire, because those guys get expensive. Those retired guys that you hire back after a year, they get expensive. Yeah. So it's, if he doesn't officially retire, I wouldn't put it past him.
No, and I agree with that. But Quentin and I were talking about that he's and I think there before Artie Almendarez left. He sort of changed the structure a little bit of Calallen's athletic administration, where they hired an athletic director for female sports. Coach Campbell was over it, and then they made Coach Chapman an assistant athletic director, in the process of that. So, I think there was a little bit of trying to, take some of the load off of Coach Campbell with that as well. So I think that's one of the things I think to think about is kind of where Calallen is at as a school district right now, and how much is there, because from what we've been told, and I think you guys may have been, from what we've heard, is that there is actually a little bit of growth coming in the school, I doubt they move up to 5A because their numbers are such that number is going to keep going up and they're just going to chase it. But there's some growth coming. I don't know that they're completely landlocked, that there is some places that there can be growth and building and things like that. So Calallen really has to, I think as a district, the district is really at a crossroads the last couple of years, because when I first got here, that administration had been there forever.
Yeah, Artie had been there forever.
Yeah, between Coach Danaher, his wife, Artie, a number of people that taught there, that they had been there forever. And now the district sort of is at a crossroads on, a different generation of administrators, teachers, things like that. So there's a lot to be decided with this hire, and I have not heard that they're going to do a separate AD with a football coach. I think they may still do an AD with a football coach, but you never know.
I think if they did a separate AD and just kept a head coaching job, he may have stayed.
He might have, yeah. And yeah. Who agrees with you on that? Quentin. Quentin said that. Yeah. Quentin said that. He might have stayed. But I think personally, though, in the times I've talked to Steve, I think he was right. I think he was tired. Whether he would have just been straight football coach and not had the AD duties or some AD duties, I think he would have retired anyway.
Well, think about it this way. What you just brought up amongst yourself, right? He was the last one. That was the last guy. Yes. So at some point, you look at the program and say, okay, I've done what I've done here. This place is in a change. It's time to hand the reins over and let someone else put a stamp on this place, right? I've done my part. Right. I'm going to get out of the way. He bridged the gap for him, right?
Yes.
They were not shell shocked when Danaher dipped, because I think if you had a Danaher retirement without a replacement, that would have been a circus.
Yes.
They had the guy who, if you go back, a lot of people wanted him a while back, right?
Yeah.
So he did his job. He helped him out. Now I think it's one of those things of like, okay, I was the last one. There's new administration here. There's a lot of new changes. There's a lot of new changes to the way schools and athletics work today from when he got into this thing.
Yes.
I'm gonna step away and I'm gonna let someone else take over this charge and rebuild this program or put a new stamp on this program.
Yes, that I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's a changing of the guard essentially.
Yeah, you think about it, you wake up one day and you look around and it's like all my buddies are gone.
Yeah.
The familiarity is no longer here. Yeah, you're familiar with your management and your administration, but it's different, right? The people that are in administration are probably half your age.
Yes.
Let's move on now. Now he's in a new chapter, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what his family's like. Who knows? He might pop up as, like what you said, an assistant somewhere closer to where he wants to retire, maybe.
Yeah.
I know he's down from here, but right. I want to say he does have a ranch up north that he goes to, or a lease or something like that. So I don't know. That's a
I don't know. Or he could become, or he could become the guy where defensive coordinators around the Coastal Bend start knocking on his door,
A consultant, right?
one day and say, "Coach, I need your help with something."
Steve Campbell, Defense Incorporated.
Yes, exactly.
LLC.
I need your help with something. I mean, because I could see him doing that. Helping out. A coach trying to figure some things out, because and I think you guys talked about that with Greg, is that his defenses were so amazing in that they were not very complex. And what's interesting about how well he coached defense was the fact that, think about when he started coaching defense in the 80s to when he retired. The game went from being played in a confined spot with wing tees, power eyes, veers, things like that, a few passing offenses, maybe run into Sonny Detmer along the way, in the 80s and early 90s. But the game was pretty much contained around the box, to now where the game is played in space. That's the biggest difference now. The game is played in space, and his defense is adjusted to that. And they were successful from 1984 all the way up to 2023. Fairly successful. They may give up yards, they might, but very rarely were they playing games that they were getting their, what's handed to them. They were competitive most of the vast majority of the time his defenses were on the field.
I mean, look what they did to Flower Bluff this year, and this to me was one of the weaker Calallen teams I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, well,
completely Flower Bluff off their game.
You guys mentioned Manville, and then I think Quentin tweeted something about how Calallen, a Steve Campbell-led defense stopped, slowed A-Chain down in that state semifinal that year against Fort Bend Marshall.
Yeah, he just put it in here. It was 153 yards. You thought it was under 100 yards. It was 153 yards, but he broke one for 80.
Yes, so they had kept him in check all game long. And I know, and I know after they played Aledo didn't want any part of that program again, because they came out of that hurting, because Calallen was very, very physical against them, and their head coach told Danaher that. He's like, look, we don't want any part of you guys again, because that's one of the things they're known for, is that they're very physical, and that's one of the balances you have to have in this hire in terms of the X's and O's. Where do you want to go with what you want your program to look like? Do you want it to look like it is now, where you believe in a running game and you believe in playing solid defense? Or do you want to spread it out and, do some different things? So, but I think there's a lot of things to consider with this hire beyond football as well.
So let me ask you this, and this is kind of piggybacking what Tep was saying earlier. So, you run the wing tee, and people are like, you've got to convince the kids to run the wing tee, right? Now, has that caused some of the athletes, the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, to go somewhere else? Now,
possibly,
if you bring a coach in, I'm just not hypothetically speaking, not so before the comments start flying in here. Oh, we don't need that. They're not going to do it. Hypothetically speaking, if they bring one of those guys in, do those athletes start coming back? Do you keep kids? Do you bring different kids like that in?
You can, but I'll say this: I have worked in three different metropolitan areas during the course of my career in Texas. And I worked in the Petroplex, where transferring was not that big of a deal. You would have the kids go from Permian or Lee or whatever, they would move, but it wasn't as big of a deal as they make it out. Kids pretty much stayed where they were at. I lived in the Metroplex, where kids move from one school to another school, and it's very similar here in Corpus.
It's like changing shirts up
yes,
there.
It's very similar here in Corpus Christi. And I think to sort of solve that problem is you have a program that kids and parents want to be a part of, no matter what kind of offense or defense you run. And if you win, kids, the people will gravitate to your program. But I think you're right. If they open it up a little bit, you might have some of those type of kids return. that want to run that kind of stuff. But for me, I'm sort of looking at this job as someone who can juggle a lot of things if they're going to be the AD, as well, because there's a lot to juggle these days from when Danaher took it in '84 to now in 2024. In terms of the athletic director role, and they do have assistants to help. But the other amazing thing about Calallen is think about the success they've had in some of their other programs. And they have an emerging softball program who is suddenly becoming a state power.
Yep.
And was probably truthfully is arguably the best softball team, San Antonio South, and this year. And you have a baseball program that has 3 state championships. That's always good. And I think their girls basketball program was on the up this year. And then I think things kind of, slowed down a little bit, but that school has had a lot of success in a lot of different things. And, I think I think somebody has the right quote here is the wrong hire will destroy Calallen. This is a big deal, because it's been a while since they've had somebody in that position, and the other thing is too, is I think a coach mentioned this to Quentin, is like Calallen is one of those schools that's sort of like, I'm not comparing, sort of, but Calallen is one of those schools like Texas, Ohio State, USC, and UCLA. And why I mention those schools is if Texas is good, previous to them leaving, if Texas is good, the Big 12 is one of the best conferences in the country. If Ohio State and Michigan are good, the Big 10 is considered one of the best conferences in the country. If USC and UCLA are good, the Pac-12 is considered one of the best conferences in the country. If Oregon's good, whatever. If Wisconsin's good and they're 11-1, the Big 10's mediocre, and it's even the same way in the SEC. When Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee are good, the SEC is great. But if Auburn and A&M are good, the SEC is sort of down this year.
It's a down year, right?
Yeah. So, sorry. But you know what I'm talking about. It's a bellwether program, and if Calallen is good, then all of South Texas football is brought up with it.
That's a good point.
Fair. That's fair. Yeah.
And I'll be interested to see. It'll be an interesting search. It'll be interesting to see how quickly they do it.
I'd like to see how many names get thrown in the hat.
Yeah, and
I'd like to see that number.
Right, but I think you're going to see Calallen probably do what a lot of districts do, is hire a search firm to shield those guys.
It's the best way for them to go about this. If they want to, and then we've talked about this, me and Jacob, and I don't know the inner workings over there, but I would have to imagine it's going to be very torn as to what I think you're going to have new blood that is in that administration that might not be homegrown, that want a certain they want probably the hiring firm. Mm-hmm. I also feel like there's probably going to be some homegrown people there that are going to push really hard for possible retreads or within the system.
You're seeing that in the comments,
because this is what they've known, and this is it. But if you start looking at that program as a whole lately, the last couple of years of Danaher and into now, if you take off the rose-colored glasses, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty evident where they're at right now is not the power of expectation they normally have. And I'm just going to – last season's a prime example. They beat some of those Valley schools by like 1 to 2 scores. Those games were over in the first quarter, in the first 4 drives, in the midst and height of where that power was. 28-0, 35-0 first quarter. Starters were sitting out by the time they hit 49 in the second, 5 minutes into the second quarter.
Correct.
They maybe gave up 30 yards in the second half of those games. Right. They were in dogfights, so to speak, a lot with way lesser competition this year.
Yeah.
So for me, I think you need to come and you need to rebuild. You need to take a deep look at it and start rebuilding, because you are right. The wrong hire could set you back 5 to 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. And you also have I
lived in Portland.
Yeah.
10 years of misery before we got it right.
Right.
I mean, really.
Right.
And that's where you can teeter real fast and go the wrong way.
But I also I live in Portland too, Justin, and I think the thing that will help GP, that Calallen needs to think about, and this is something that there's a specter of hanging over this hire as well, is that facilities.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. And there's comments here
There
about
are
facilities.
there are athletic facilities coming in Gregory, Portland. It's it's your and I tax dollars at work. You know.
Oh yeah.
There
Absolutely.
are athletic facilities coming in Portland. So, you know, that's a specter that's hanging over this Calallen hire, is that can they put up another bond to get some of these athletic facilities done out there?
Well, this last one didn't pass, right? This last one,
yeah, it didn't. It
didn't pass. The athletic part didn't pass. Prop A passed. I thought, yeah, Prop A passed. The B, the athletic facilities, did not pass.
Correct. And that's kind of where I'm at, Len, on this hire. And I've spoke to Jake about it, and I've spoke to some people. Is on paper, this is a great job. This is a great job. But when you start looking into what's going down right now and where that place is at as a whole, they got to get bonds passed. They're being surpassed by Toloso Midway in facilities. A lot of growth is in Toloso Midway. Toloso Midway has youth football programs now. London pulls in new growth, which previously in years past would have went to the Calallen way. There's nothing really industrial that's booming that way. It's on this side. Mm-hmm. Vets in a brand new Carroll is going to contain a lot of that Corpus Christi talent that's drifted years past. And on top of that, you have Miller, who's making massive runs for this region. And they're doing exactly what people in here are talking about. Oh, they air it out. Well, that's established, right? You know, you can go into that system, and you might come out and have a Trevor Long type season with a couple of talented kids around them. And then on the other side, you have Portland and Sinton, who have top-notch facilities, lots of growth, lots of industry.
Yep.
Calallen's in a very weird spot right now.
Yes,
I feel like.
Yeah. They are, and you know, you mentioned about, you know, Toloso Midway and what you know, Steve Van Matry has done over there since he's been superintendent. You know, with what they've been able to do with facilities, and you know, I think they had a bond that did not pay, you know, that did not pass as well, but they're figuring out ways to get some stuff done.
No, I think theirs did pass.
Did it?
It didn't pass the year before.
Okay, maybe that's
last time. I think it passed. That's why they're building all this stuff now.
Okay.
I thought I could be wrong. Let me look.
Right. It's tough to pass bonds these days. But anyway, I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head, Justin. Is that there's a lot of things that when you as a coach come and do tours and look at, you know, while you're, you know, figuring out, you know, what kind of athletes you have and how many you have participating both in boys and girls, what kind of support you have. There is that specter of facilities. You know, there is an indoor, you know, but their dressing facility, their weight facilities, you know, probably could use some improvement. I know they have a FEMA dome on campus.
It did pass.
You know, it did. Okay.
It did.
I know they have a FEMA dome on campus, but it's an interesting discussion. And I think that's something that coaches are going to look at when they come is like, you know, and what's coming. Cause I think one of the reasons that drew Brett Davis here was the factor of
high three,
the superintendent saying, by the way, this, and this is coming. And there's this amount of money coming from the industry that is outside your back door.
Absolutely.
You know, as well. So I think it's something that really there's a lot to this hire, you know, you know, there's a lot of things, and and as an administrator and on the group that's looking at this, whether they use a search firm or go local, there's a fine line that you could either go this way or you could go that way. And you know, if you go this way, it could affect your program for a decade or more.
The other part that's not really talked about a whole lot is Calallen isn't that rich of a district.
No.
So a lot of folks think that because of, and I always said it's because the location of the high school. The location of the high school is on the wealthier part of the district, right? But there
Right.
are some economically disadvantaged areas in the Calallen School District.
Well, I think do you remember when they appealed for the district to create the Big 11 team district in 2016?
Yes,
You know,
that was the zone year,
the first zone year, and
Yeah.
I was doing an interview with Artie up at the paper one day, and he was talking to me about that. And he's like, a lot of people. He said, we have nearly 60% of our students that are on free or reduced lunch. And he said people don't realize that, and I don't know whether that number has gone up, down, sideways, or whatever, but it's one of those things that, there is a perception with Calallen and, with that as well. But there also, I think I think people who live there understand, what how do I say that? Understand, what is happening in the district right now.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when Artie was still around, he was doing some consulting work, and, he would tell folks that said, we're not a rich district,
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of folks, and Quentin is actually the one that pointed this out, is, Danaher and Campbell made quite a bit because their years.
Yes.
Their
Yes.
years under service.
Yes.
So that's something that other folks are going to look at as well. Is like, what is the job actually going to pay?
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
So if you start breaking it down, right, too, think about this. I mean, so Danaher and Campbell were able to do what they did because of who they were and what they had built, because those facilities early on were every bit as good as anyone else in the Coastal Bend.
Yes.
Easily.
Yes.
They were top notch. So it's not hard to get people to come in when you're talking about playing for the winningest coach in high school football history and one of the top defensive coaches, if not one of the best defensive coaches we've seen across the state since he's been at the peak of his success, right?
Sold, sight unseen.
In circles and in the Texas High School Coaching Committee, it's easily said. I guarantee you his name gets brought up a lot when you talk about great defensive minds. Coach Campbell's right there. So you can overlook lack of facilities, right? And say, I don't care that my son's in a grungy weight room he's got Coach Danaher and Coach Campbell leading the charge, right? It's easy to overlook these things.
Right.
Now you bring in a new name, if that's where you go, it's not as easy to overlook this. The facilities aren't there. The sparkle of the new is not there. The winningest coach is not there, right? You've had 40 years. You've never had to deal with this, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's another wrinkle that you have to add in, right? And I think right now, if you're the administration, not only are you looking at getting a good hire, you need to start rallying around a massive bond. We've had coaches from Calallen talk about they need it. Like the coaches need it. You know what I mean? They petitioned for it.
Yeah.
And it's not just athletics, school as well. The high school itself is pretty far behind in times when it comes to updates, size,
right.
and band as well. They're a state qualifying band, right? And they don't have as much facilities as other bands in this region,
right?
Or where they go and compete against.
Yeah.
That's been another concern.
Yeah.
So I think the coaching hire is huge, but you're going to have to really rally behind some bonds, big time in that community.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do with stuff like that, and I think there is also a little bit of an arms race going on.
Oh, 100%.
in the area as well, and this is interesting, is I give CCISD credit for them continually trying to improve cabinets, putting turf at all the high schools.
They need another baseball field.
They do need another baseball field,
and
I think there is. I think there is space out there for them to do that. I've heard them talk about that, but I've always advocated
upgrade Miller.
And so I think that there is an arms race going on with, especially, and you had mentioned Sinton. We've mentioned Gregory Portland, Alice with looking to do what they're doing.
They probably got the best indoor facility around.
Yes, yeah, in what they're trying to do with the stadiums, and that's all happened within the last 5 years.
Yep.
In Alice, so and I think that you know, all these other districts around the state doing the same thing. You know, there's districts that are doing it in the valley as well. You know, so I think you really have to. I think you have to, as an administration and a school board in Calallen, you don't like to put a lot of pressure on one hire, you know, but I think that this is an important thing. This is an important thing for that community, and an important thing for that school district, because there's a lot of inward. There's a lot of inward looking that the district may have to do in the process of this that they have not had to do in the last 15, 20 years.
And then, you know, you guys just put that story out, and somebody mentioned it earlier. We kind of hit on it earlier. Was London, right? Which, you know, is, as far as growth goes, is the new Calallen, right?
Yes.
That's where everybody's moving to. I just saw that the city's annexing the school district to provide infrastructure.
Yes.
You know, so, and they want that. London wanted to, the district wanted to be annexed to get those support services.
Right.
And I think y'all projected in that story was that they'll be, well, they're definitely going to be 4A, probably the next realignment.
Right.
But they'll be 5A. I think right now there's 1,900 kids in the school, and they think by 2027 there'll be 27,
probably
2,700 or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're building a neighborhood out there, Justin, that's going to have a lazy river.
Oh, wow. Looks like I'm moving.
Well, I think London is on its way to being the next Sherryland, I think is the best way to describe it.
Oh, yeah. You're probably right. Speaking of, we got our hats.
You know, but I think to make it close to home, I think London is on its way to being a Sherryland, also a possibly, you know, Smithson Valley type of place, Comal ISD, you know, and how they've had, you know, explosive growth around New Braunfels there in Comal County, you know, Frisco, you know, and where I lived in Fort Worth, we lived in Saginaw. And when we left Fort Worth 20 years ago, there was one high school in Saginaw. Now there's 5.
Yeah.
The growth up there is crazy, right?
In just that part of Northwest Fort Worth. So, and I think one of the things though that's different about Corpus though is that there's a population shift. There's not a lot of growth. I think.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. Yeah.
There's people shifting to other parts of. There's people shifting to other parts of the city or other parts of the area, but there's not a whole lot of population growth. Is that, you know, and is that fair to say?
I think
you guys have lived here longer than I have, but I think I've noticed that, you know, is that because CCISD schools they're losing population by the day. Yeah. You know,
and guess where they're going?
Yeah. And they're going, and the population is shifting. It's shifting to Flower Bluff. It's shifting to maybe Calallen and TM and Portland and Sinton, you know, and other places like that. And, you know, there's a population shift. There's not a lot of explosive growth in terms of a whole bunch of people moving in. So I think that's one of the differences between, you know, San Antonio and
J-Lo's not even coming to the Coastal Bend on her tour. She's going to Edinburgh.
Who is
J-Lo?
People have complained, you know, people have complained. As long as I've lived here, people have complained about the lack of concerts and events and stuff like that.
Don't get me started on that. That's a whole other show.
Yeah. You know, you guys have lived here your whole lives. I've only lived here for almost 10 years. So, I mean,
that's a lifetime.
But people have mentioned that the Corpus doesn't necessarily get the shows that they get everywhere else.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But man, I think we're over an hour. I think we need to wrap up. I gotta work tomorrow. Justin's got a long day tomorrow too. I think you're way past your bedtime now, aren't you, champ?
I'm like right there.
But Len, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. And I see everybody's talking about this bond. So Callan's got another bond coming up in May.
Yeah, I believe
it's
do.
coming on the ballot. It doesn't mean it's going to pass, guys. I mean, it was on the ballot in November.
It's tough. It is tough to pass bonds these days, and I came from West Texas where it's even tougher, you know.
Yeah.
To do that kind of stuff because
Victoria can't pass a bond.
Yeah, and I had an old coach in Midland.
Our Bluff's having a hard time passing bonds.
Yeah, I had an old coach in Midland tell me once that he had rich people. You know, he had people that would rather write them a check for $10,000 than to have their property taxes go up a few hundred on a year. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
And especially in this day and age, I mean, it's tough to pass these bonds with everything that's going on, and you hope they do. My wife is a teacher. You just hope the districts have the support they need, for that kind of stuff, and you hope that as Calallen goes through this process, a superintendent can look at a candidate and go, look, this is what we've got coming. And it is about the people. We do know that it is about the people, and it is about, the support and the athletes. But there comes a certain point where a coach has to look at, if it's not going to happen, I don't know whether I want to come here. So there's going to be a lot of introspection coming on in that part of Corpus Christi over the next couple of weeks.
One more thing we didn't talk about before we go. One more thing we didn't talk about that we're talking about the jobs that can come open and big name coaches. Watch out for those multi-school ISDs.
Yeah.
You've got an athletic coordinator who maybe feels like he's doing a good job and is getting the shaft. I mean, why wouldn't you want to come to a one-horse town district, right?
Yes.
Where you're the only game in town.
Yep. And I think somebody had mentioned it in the chat, that there might be some 5A or 6A coordinators who might be interested in it.
I don't think they're going to give that job to a coordinator. Not if they're going to be the AD role. First time AD in that job, I don't think so.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Right. That's true. And, unless they have specific ties or whatever, because what's interesting is that, what's interesting is that Danaher really doesn't have a large tree, if that makes sense, because
the tree retired.
Yeah. The tree kind of stayed in one spot, between Campbell and Clyburn. There have been some guys that have gone off, but there really isn't this spread out tree that there's a whole bunch of, Danaher Campbell disciples. There's some out there, but a lot of them stayed. Stayed at Calallen or moved on after a number of years. So it's something to think about.
I really think, and this is just me personally, the best thing you can do is find a really hungry, somewhat successful, who's shown success at a program in the 3A level, maybe 4A, low 4A, or even same classification of 4A, who's shown, hey, this dude's a young go-getter. He's shown that he can run a program as an AD.
Yeah.
Had success. He's going to probably, hopefully, he might be able to overlook the facility, lack of facility, depending on where he's coming from. And he's hungry to get in there and do something. I think that's to me a good bet. That to me is probably your best, safest chance of having a dude that's hungry, because I think if you're really swinging for a massive big head name hire, it's going to be hard to pull them off their facilities. You're not pulling Brent Davis off $138K in the facilities he's sitting on. And I'm just using it as an example. I don't think that's what they would try to do. But if you're going for a name like that, you ain't pulling a guy off of San Angelo Central unless you have something to offer, right? You're not pulling a guy out of Katy or a big powerhouse out of Houston or San Antonio or Austin with this type of stuff. You need to go get the dude that's in a 3A school right now that he's had some success or good success, and he says, hey, I can come in here and be successful. I brought out Daryl Andrews. I would like to see Daryl Andrews make an appearance in the Coastal Bend again.
That would be interesting.
I don't know if you could get him to come off of his hometown, but I feel like he's done a lot of stuff there at his hometown already.
He's the mayor there, isn't he?
Up to me, I want to say they got some money up there for him, right?
Well, they've had a phenomenal improvement in facilities.
Yeah, I mean, they're a rich district. I don't think they're broke
for all sports. I mean, it's and I think Justin, you hit the nail on the head with the formula. If you find somebody that's younger, that's been successful at the 3A, 4A level, that's had to deal with the AD administrative duties that go along with it, it as well. And because if they want to keep that job as a football coach AD, because I haven't seen it posted yet, so it'll be interesting when they post it to see what it says.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have a board meeting and kind of huddle around it and decide the path. That's the first step, right before they put that job out. Is
right.
So board's got to decide the direction they want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I believe Justin, you hit the nail on the head. Is you've got to go get you've got to go get, if you need to go get somebody that's been dealing with that already. And I think I do believe that you also, I do believe there's probably going to be one maybe two, but I'm sure in this case there's probably going to be one internal candidate that everybody kind of rallies around on the staff.
I keep seeing his name pop up in the chat.
Yeah, that's going to rally around on the staff. From the staff, because it always had. I've seen situations like this before. Where you've had a long-time coach, and then there's usually, like there's one guy that everybody on the staff kind of rallies around, and that's when you see how much, what's the right word? The right word is how much there is butting heads there will be between the staff and the administration. Because when I moved to Midland 20 years ago, that's what happened. John Parchman leaves, and the whole staff rallied around his offensive coordinator, but the administration didn't hire him. So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, so I think that's something to, and the other thing is that you also when whoever you bring in, you got to give them the authority to do what they need to do in terms of hiring and firing.
Yep.
And that's hard. That's hard for districts to let go of.
Yeah,
that's very hard.
That's hard. And I've seen situations where districts have told coaches, well, you can only bring 2 assistants with you. I've seen other situations where, in the case of, some local districts and districts out in West, basically said, put in place who you need to put in place and hire and fire who you need to fire. You got carte blanche, do what you need to do. So
those are usually the most successful.
I've heard that story too.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, that's normally what's the most successful route.
Well, and I see, and I've seen you get an idea of this, but I saw a district that had 2 schools where one school they only allowed to bring 2 assistants. The other one, they basically told the new coach, do what you got to do. And it was the same administration.
Mm-hmm.
Does that district rhyme with Fector County?
No, it was not. It was no. I will. Ector County is Ector County was usually pretty good, about that. Usually whoever they hired to be those 2 football coaches, they said, go do what you got to do. Some worked, some didn't, but it was the other district, the one neighboring one, that did that.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the neighboring one that did that. Yeah. So
pull out a map, folks. We're not going to say anything. Pull out a map.
But anyway, I don't want to keep you guys any longer. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, Len. It's always good to have you on, man. You take a lot of the heavy lifting for us. We don't have to speak a whole lot, man. So
that's okay. I have the gift of gab sometimes.
The chair made it, so that's good.
Yes, it did.
But if you guys look it up, we've told the story a few times. But guys, it's been a good one. Man, both shows over an hour.
I'd like to hop on these a little more regularly. You know what I mean? And just shoot the high school football bull. What we're hearing, right? What's going on?
Yeah. I'd like to wax poetic about my show a little bit more.
I will.
This Friday Night Light show.
Yeah.
You're talking about this new coach coming in. The same thing happened with a young Eric Taylor.
Yeah, there you go.
And Coach Mac McGill getting upset about him not getting the job, the longtime staff member not getting the job, and things were a little rocky up front for the Dillon Panthers.
That's true. I will have to say this, guys. I will defer a lot to Ray Castillo and Quentin Martinez because my job has taken me to points all across the state.
So Len was a fill-in tonight. Ray was supposed to be on, and Len gracefully stepped in and took the reins. And like I said, it's always good to have Len on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But he's out doing basketball tonight. But those guys are much more in tune than I am these days with the way my job has worked out. So, but
you're good to get the state perspective as well, like we had Tepper on, just because you've been so many areas, and your job now is requiring you to cover more areas of the state, and you're a little more plugged in.
A little bit, yeah.
I want to hear the history.
Do what?
I want to hear some of the history.
History of what?
You got a lot of history built in you, just of high school football.
I covered the last good Permian team. I will say that.
94. I was close.
And I covered the last good Permian team in 1995. I covered Euless Trinity when they became Euless Trinity in the early 2000s when Steve Lineweaver got there. And
that's when they were beating Judson every year in the state championships, wasn't it?
Well, I had left before they started winning state. He had started getting them on the upward trajectory. But when he got there in 2001, he had just come off a state championship at Commerce, and he ran the Broken Bone. He was a straight Broken Bone guy for years. Ran it at Carroll when he was offensive coordinator, South Lake Carroll. Well, when he got to Euless Trinity, he ran it the first year. He ran it the first year, and it just didn't work. And so him and his staff starts looking at their kids, and they're like, you know what? We got big linemen. We got a bunch of guys that can run. We got a bunch of guys that can play linebacker. We've got some DBs. And you know what? I think we should be able to find a pretty good quarterback out of 2.5 junior highs. So they go down and talk to Mike Johnston at Katy and say, tell us about your power eye. And from that point on, they became Euless Trinity. And
see, this is the stuff I'm talking about. This is where we need to get. That's a good cliffhanger, Len.
Yeah, we'll pick that up next time, Len. We're going to have you on once a month or something, man.
What do you think about my mustache, by the way? It's new.
What you do, you brother.
Looks like, I just want to throw this out there. This is not choice. This is not my choice. I had a shave today. I lost a bet to my baseball team. The beard's coming back.
Say Car Ramrod. Car Ramrod. See, you're starting to look like Farva.
You do you, brother. You do what you got to do, man.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. And we'll be back. Just like Justin said, we'll keep the show going. We'll do something, pop in. We got something up our sleeves. That we're gonna announce next month, man. We got a big show announcement we're announcing next month, man.
Rebrand.
I don't know, dude. So Cat's coming into town this weekend, so we'll try to figure something out, and we may have a rebrand up our sleeves. Something may be happening, but we got some big news coming next month, and you guys just have to stay in tune, man. And I know, guys. I got a little group chat with a couple coaches going on. This secret we cannot let go right now. All right, Len, we'll see you.
All right.
We can't let this secret out yet, man. This is a good one. It's a good one. It's a big move for the show. You guys are gonna be excited. I can't wait. I'm on pins and needles. But again, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, man, it's good. And man, we'll keep keeping the content pumping, man. Do you guys have any ideas? You guys want to see something? We had a comment in there to getting Jeff Luna on the show from Poth. You know, another Region 4 successful coach, man. We'll work on getting Jeff Luna on.
That'd be good.
Yeah, and we're trying to expand a little more, man. We'll get some head coaches out from the other areas of the state, the DFW area.
I like the statewide. I like the statewide reach. You know,
we'll get some guys out of Ector County, man. We'll get some guys out of East Texas, West Texas. We're kind of big now, dude. We got Tepper on the show, dude. We can probably get Scott Surratt on the show, man.
I want his father-in-law on the show.
Yeah, look up who his father-in-law is, and then
that was mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was. That was a little bit of a shocker. Look up who Coach Surratt's father-in-law is, and maybe we'll get him on. Coach Campbell, if you're watching, I don't know if he's very plugged in or not, but you know, you've got an old student of yours that's wishing you well in the retirement. Guys, again, well, I can keep going on forever. Justin's got to get to bed. We'll see you guys maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll see y'all.